some of the songs were actually pretty good, but we initially just decided to scrap it. Yeah, and I'm actually think it was a right decision because I can now clearly, like, strongly stand behind each and every song we wrote for this new album and record it and the way it sounds and what it means and the whole flow and people as a whole, they're trying to create an illusion that it's not, that there's a sense of structure, control, and everything is going fine, but I just don't feel that way, so that's what I sing about. Okay, so epigrama basically is a word which means that these were like short sentences written on gravestones. But there it was quite creepy having people watch over you from very up. Yeah, if anybody listens to the new album, I would really appreciate if you send feedback.
First, congratulations with upcoming album. I think we're 10 days away from the official release. And hello everyone. Today we're with Vaidotas, the main creative force behind Lithuanian metal band Erdve.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Nice to meet you, and nice to be here talking to you.
So it has been 5 years since the release of your previous album, your second album, Savigaila. And think read that you described before that as a deliberate pause that you took to like think through what the music was actually for. So what did the answer to that? Well, I guess we can partially deduce that because now we're here with the third album. Can you take us through the thinking process, please?
Well, basically, yeah, it's been a while since the last record, and after that time, we have actually recorded a full album. I think it was in 2024 or 2023, and I actually don't remember exactly, but we made a demo for a new album, and it had a lot of interesting ideas there. Some of the songs were actually pretty good, but we initially just decided to scrap it, and that's quite an unusual thing to do because, well, you are trying to catch and put a certain feeling into the album in a certain time of life you're in creatively, and in general, uh, you're still like trying to portray your emotions and things that are important to you. So maybe that was a little bit of unexpected decision for me personally, even as well, to just basically get rid of most of the music from that batch of music. It was around 50 minutes of recorded music. So, but what happened is I looked at it very critically, and it felt like there was something really missing from the whole thing. I don't know, I just didn't feel something that I want to share with others. It was lacking maybe a little bit of sincerity. It was lacking, in my opinion, musically. So I decided to give it a little bit of a pause creatively, maybe like a year, no more than 2 years, and basically focus on trying to find things me personally and some other band members enjoy in playing music and creating music. And that led to a very nice realization that we're enjoying the rediscovery of the creative exploration, of what it means to make music. And I immediately saw that it's really important to give yourself a little bit of time and reflect why you're playing music, what it means to you, in what way would you like it to sound, and not even to sound from the terms of songwriting, but also in terms of production and sound design. And what we did is within the last few years, me and especially our guitarist Adomas, we both were sitting so many hours in the studio, basically like in our teenage years, playing a lot with sound production, learning stuff, learning new recording techniques, realizing that you can blend even more stuff to make the sound as heavy as possible, or make it even transform instruments into soundscapes, and uh, all these things that are really more in adherence to sound design rather than songwriting. So we try to use that as much as possible, and that I think really um, empowered us to create better music, the one that we would be proud of getting out there. And I could definitely say that compared to the demo we recorded, well, it was actually not a demo. It was actually like a almost full, all in production. I was actually about to deliver it to to a record label, and yeah, and I'm actually think it was a right decision because I can now clearly like strongly stand behind each and every song we wrote for this new album and record it, and the way it sounds, and what it means, and the whole flow and everything else. So yeah, I think it was important to just maybe reset a little bit and just reestablish priorities in what you think is important, because music is like a huge part of my own personal life. And so yeah, I think that was the logic behind it, just to make it better, just to be better yourself, and improve yourself, and maybe, say more to the audience by doing that, to have more substance in every aspect of the album.
And were you able to use some of the ideas from that scrapped 50 minutes of music in Epigrama, or is Epigrama completely different?
Yeah, I recycled some of those ideas, but I ended up like, well, for example, there were each song. I think we had like 10 songs over there, and each one of them had a really good hook. So I used that as sort of a basis to reinvent and recompose some of the arrangements, but basically ended up switching different tempos, switching tunings, switching the tone and everything else, and it entirely became a different thing. So that served as a sort of writing template, or some basic idea for where you can just start from. So it wasn't like completely disregarded in that sense. But the song, I don't think you would ever recognize, if you could listen to that demo and this album. I don't think you would recognize a single part. It's just, it's the way of a creative workflow that I personally use when I write music, and not even when I write music, when I do all sorts of work everywhere else. You just have some kind of framework to start from, and then you decide whether to keep it entirely, but it gives you ideas. And that's not only from the just taking from the old ideas that you wrote, but also from hearing ideas of other artists and other musicians and soundtracks, or even all kinds of the whole array of genres, just something that gives you an idea. So I had a lot to work from. It wasn't like a total clean start.
And you also mentioned you sitting together in one room with Adomas, and Epigrama is the first album where he co-produces with you. In on the first two albums, you took that over completely. So, what changed about the band, about the music, or about you that now made that hangover easier or right move right now?
Well, I think it was just a good fit. Both of us are very obsessive about spending a lot of very valuable time in the studio. So it's it's really hard to do when everything is according to schedule and everybody has limited time. And sometimes things don't really work out. For example, if you're planning a recording session, and you gather and you brainstorm ideas and try to do something, and sometimes it's just completely you end up with no results. So it takes a certain kind of, I I should call passion, or an inner drive to see value in spending a lot of hours in that. So Epigrama is really a result of me and Adomas really working it off with each and every song, like rewriting song structures trying different ideas. He especially helped me with tracking vocals because it's very difficult doing it by yourself, which I used to do previously because, well, I'm kind of really enjoy the learning process when you do everything by yourself. So I also do that in my work and some other personal projects. It's just the way I do things. I wouldn't call it that to be a control freak or anything. I just really enjoy uh, just getting to a result myself. So yeah, so it just Adomas joining a band he joined a few years back. I don't actually remember when exactly, maybe 2, 3 years ago. And ever since we were really in line in terms of vision. It's very easy to discuss, and he also challenges my ideas, and I challenge his ideas and everything is to structure the song as best as we can. And actually, I think when I compare the very first iterations of Epigrama. And Epigrama, the title song, is actually the first song we wrote for the new album. And first, I thought it like completely wouldn't fit the concept, the sound of Erdve, and how we like to do things. But we really worked it out and to the band's favor, and I actually had after the collaborating with him to have confidence to put it on the album. At first, for me, it seemed like a completely different genre or something, but yeah. So that's because I see value in such collaboration, and it takes certain character and certain motivation to be able to do that together. And spending a lot of time is one of those things, and also having uh, a consistent vision, also good taste, and we both are really interested in learning production. So we did everything by ourselves. So I don't know, maybe I think we spent more time mixing and mastering and just fucking around all the tracks and settings more than we actually wrote the music. So I think that says a lot in that sense.
And then in your own ears, would you say the biggest difference in music, but also the sound between Epigrama and Savigaila? I know Savigaila also had very unusual track, the piano piece that was, I think, second to last track on the album. Will we have something like this on Epigrama?
This time, no, we were trying to be really straightforward with the song and basically concentrate on the songwriting and actually writing songs instead of writing riffs and putting them together into a song. So it was kind of a completely new approach since we did the first and the second album because we were really emphasizing the song structures. They have choruses, for example, even though they don't sound like traditional rock or any other music choruses. They are even unusual for metal-like choruses if you if you have an example for that. But uh, it's uh, it's like actually looking to it more as a way of world building and storytelling. So everything is really in line. For example, lyrics, what kind of riffs or what the song structure is, and it tells a story, and lyrics directly cohere to the way the music plays when it's we're basically trying to work hand in hand. So before that, what we did, to be honest, uh, when I was writing those songs and recording them, I just did it to the best of my knowledge, mostly based on feeling. So we used to like to describe our music as being based on raw expression. So that's exactly what it means. Usually the bands they come together, they improvise, and they are trying to assemble a song brick by brick. And I used to just try to feel it out, like hammer it out. Especially when I'm, like a terrible mood after work or just having some sort of I don't know, some things I'm thinking about, not necessarily good things, sometimes bad things, but basically harnessing that energy into something that sounds the way I feel. So that ended up having long songs, repetitive songs, maybe some monotonous things. Um, Very often experimenting with all sorts of noises and all that stuff. So that sounds exactly how my life was at the time. And right now, me personally and other band members, we are way more structured, of course, because there's been some time. The band is almost 10 years old now, so third album in almost. So now what is entirely different, production, songwriting, these are just, you know, procedural nuances, if I could say it like that. But the main thing is this clarity that I personally didn't have before. And the clarity is that I am much able to envision something in my head instead of just feeling it, but really like have it inside my head, the way it sounds, the way it flows, and uh, and I basically just can hear the whole song already in my head before I start writing it and before I start structuring it. And I don't know where that comes from, but I notice it in other areas of my life. So basically, when you do something long enough, you become this sort of, well, I wouldn't say an expert, in some fields I could call myself an expert, like in my work, for example. I'm also working as a photographer, so I really, by now, I think I know what I'm doing. Musically, it's more emotional, it's more expressive, so I cannot call myself an expert, but basically um, I'm just able to express more accurately what I envision. And then I didn't have this clarity before. And even right now, I have so many ideas that we are gonna try to implement actually this year already with the new music, and it really has this I don't know, a certain confidence that I have, and it will sound confident, and I'm gonna be confident to express it. Maybe someone would call that creative maturity. I don't know. It's my first time living a life, so I don't know how how it goes. Maybe many artists and musicians feel that way when they do something for, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, or since they were teenagers exploring countless things, and then after 10 or 15 years they realize, okay, so this is what I like, this is what I enjoy, and this is me. So I think Epigrama sounds 85% like I would like it to sound. There's more to improve in the whole process and in the whole, creative part.
And let's talk about the other creative part of the songs, the lyrics. The Erdve lyrics are about like pretty philosophical. They are about humans and human thinking and human feelings. And according to press release, Epigrama frames every decision, but also non-decision, importantly, as moral debt. And where does that framing come from?
Actually, I think I read it somewhere like this. I actually don't remember exactly where I got it from, but I think it was some kind of physics related documentary that I watched about the process of universal entropy. And I think it was the timeline of the universe that you could watch on YouTube. It's like a audio visual documentary, not like a real documentary with scientists and stuff, but basically I think it was envisioning from the beginning of the universe. It was like a fast forward, like millions and billions of years, and it basically, I'm not a physicist, so I'm not gonna pretend that I understand exactly what was going on there, but there was this sort of depressing idea that I actually just remember it now that you asked. I always had that thing for the last several years, and I actually forgot where it came from, and I just now remember. So I'm glad I remembered, so I could answer you. So yeah, that's a really cool video that you can watch, and then basically said that everything in universe is just energy wise is just basically bound by laws of entropy, and everything is destined to descend into chaos and nothingness. So it was basically they were asking a question: when does the time end in terms of the scale of universe? So when the very, very last photon of light just disperses because of entropy, which is gonna happen inevitably, like I don't know if they explained it like that. Anyway, so it made me sad a little bit because it turns out that everything is slowly but gradually eroding in time, starting with us getting older and everything else in the world and in the universe. So that's where the idea comes from. But why am I even thinking about this idea? Is basically I just think that I can feel it in my own decisions and in my own flow of life, and I think my band members would completely agree with me on this one. And it's sort of the I don't want to come off as very like doomsday-like person. I'm not, but the idea that there's no happy ending really, really, really gets on my shoulders sometimes. And that's in a grand scheme of things. Of course, we have more grounded problems that we need to solve and be appreciative, and that actually helps me appreciate things. But it's sort of it's sort of an exploration what entropy and this deterioration of all things in life reflect on basically myself, and I can really I'm really a little bit troubled about it, so that's why I wrote lyrics about it as well. So every song, including the title track, is sort of about that, but it's trying to frame it in more of a storytelling sense through everyday. I'm sorry, not every day. It's more like life situations that you're going through, especially the way you feel about things mentally, psychologically. And I think that when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense that things are not always going the way you want them to be. And I think many people would relate with that. So it's sort of the devastating truth of entropy that inevitably, I think, touches us in one sense or another, depending what is important to you. So, relationships, life in general, your physical health, people, gone from your life, other people that you see on the news that are dying, or you see how things are more or less destined to chaos, even though we people as a whole, they're trying to create an illusion that it's not, that there's a sense of structure, control, and everything is going fine. But I just don't feel that way, so that's what I sing about.
But does this help to enjoy and try to enjoy every minute of your life here and like right here in this moment and not think about the potential happy big moment in the future and plan for that, but no, just enjoy what you have right now?
It does a little bit, but it was more like about mm, actually what the music is for, is expressing your feelings at the time when you write the song. So what I noticed, a very interesting thing is that when I was writing lyrics and the music, everything came together without even realizing it. Also, when making music videos, everything was like about the same thing. I was not even when doing a music video for Nira or Idos, those first two singles from the album that we released. Everything really came together so easily because I think it was somewhere premeditated. Every For example, well, how it starts with music, then I'm starting to write lyrics for that music, but it's not like you listen to every 10 seconds and write a good sentence about it. It's still more like, I don't know how to say, poetry or something. So you just think about it and you just let it flow, and you have a bunch of text, and eventually you try to make that text fit the song structure, etc. But yeah, so I think that was just necessary to get it out. I don't know if that makes me feel better. Actually, we were in the studio yesterday with Adomas working on this on another project we have, and we were discussing new music, and we have already like bunch of a lot of new music that we're working on, and it's already sounds different. And I said I cannot even listen to this album anymore. I've been listening to it for 2 years, and it has this sort of feeling that I kind of want to get away from, actually. So I basically just canned it in an album, and right now it's a little bit difficult to listen to. Not because I love every minute of that music, but you know when they say like the music is something that for you to release your feelings, and so it would be uh, just express your emotions and stuff. So I think that's true. That's exactly what happened. Um, Maybe it will be easier if I maybe achieve some things or get myself into a different, mindset. Maybe I could start listening to it again and enjoyed it more as like just an art piece. Of course, it's always difficult to listen to your own music, but but I should say the new music will again sound different. I don't know if that's a good thing, but I think it's inevitable. Otherwise, you're just stuck in the same place.
And so you write in Lithuanian, and now a lot of bands in rock and metal, they always make the decision, should we try to be more accessible to international audience and write and sing in English, or stick to what is our native language, and it will be potentially easier to express your ideas and your feelings. So how was that process for you?
We recently had many questions about it from our audience. We tend to talk with them privately a lot, which is, I think, a very cool thing. Because I'm not sure how many people like directly reach out to share their feelings about it. So naturally, they have questions about, well, what the hell are you singing about? And they're writing comments like, I cannot understand a word, but I can feel it, And so, of course, I think every band that chooses to build narrative around their native language, for us, how it started, we felt like it's a cool thing to do because we love our language, we love our country. We also think that we're able to be more authentic in terms of emotion when you sing in your own language. And to be honest, Lithuanian language, because another natural way would be English, right? So I'm not gonna sing a language that I don't speak. So I compared to Lithuanian English is, well, maybe someone would strongly disagree, but in terms of, how do you say, traditional metal phrasings and topics and the way it sounds, something of something, something dark of something even darker, or something like that. Unless you go into the Shakespearean world, the language seems like pretty basic. And if you want to say something really strong, I don't think English language really has this capacity for that. But maybe, well, I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong, but that's just my feeling. And Lithuanian language really has, I think, strong color to it. But I should also say that I don't consider myself very literate in my own language as well. I've actually had a little bit of feedback before. They're saying, why are you fucking around with the words? I mean, why are you not using the correct words in a correct way? Because I really like to blend the words and make up my own words that sound, and people, of course, they understand because it's a really common thing to do is to play around with words and uh, not like sounding funny or anything, but basically have these weird sentences that sound, for example, harsh just for the sake of sounding harsh, not for the sake of being liter lit
Like grammatically correct, right?
not even grammatically, but also but we have quite strict rules about the language in everywhere. So because we want to preserve it as the way we want it to, and try not to use too much maybe some, well, for example, I think there's a problem because people just use an English word every second word now, especially in the working environments and stuff, or even they use a beginning is an English word and it ends up in a Lithuanian ending, just Lithuanianize the word. I'm sorry, just
Yeah,
talking.
we do the same in Ukrainian, so I can totally understand this.
Yeah, but we never use anything like that in our lyrics. I try to be as poetic as possible. And for example, if I wanna say something, well, basically dark, aggressive, or angry, I never use the swear words that we use here, which is most of the swear words come from our neighboring countries, and they're not nice, and they sound a little bit barbaric and a little bit too straightforward. So I try to make it like very sophisticated in a way. But as I said, I'm not a very literate person. I'm not like an expert of Lithuanian language by any means, and would get criticized. But I think ultimately it's music, and it's a type of my own expression. If I'm writing lyrics, I want them to feel important to me, and that's just I think that's the way to do it. And yeah, and we actually also had another discussion yesterday when we were in the studio about the language thing. The idea of the discussion was we've recently seen some successful examples in the music world. I think there were some bands that also sing in their local language, like Vildiarta, for example, or now it just came out of my mind at the moment. But anyway, that's not the point. The point was that we were discussing, okay, so if you would have take all your knowledge and understanding how the music industry works the way you see it from your own perspective, what would be the most successful project, um, just something that could be potentially like kicked off in the first year and become very successful, just for the sake of discussion, because as I said, we have other projects and thoughts, not in the musical context, but it was just for fun. So yeah, we actually were a little bit stuck while discussing whether an English language would be like definitely like the way to go in that sense. Would it really be? And we couldn't come up with a very like definite answer. So maybe accessibility would be better, but for this band, I wouldn't even imagine how to do it in English. Maybe I used to do that before in the past with some other bands. I was actually pretty good at it in pronouncing and doing all those, um, uh, a little bit cliche stuff. Right now, I should say so. More like how death metal bands are doing and using those expressions, philosophical words, or those uh, nasty words, or something describing something nasty, evil, dark, or whatever. um, or just using the names of illnesses, especially mental illnesses. This is like a really good one. Just take a medical book and just um,
And just start singing it, right?
yeah, exactly. And sing it until you become like that yourself. And yeah, so So yeah, in the context of Erdve, it would be really difficult to switch, and there's no need for that, I think. But I could definitely experiment, and maybe we're actually thinking about doing some collabs in the future with the non-Lithuanian bands, and we have several in mind. So that would be an interesting. I think it would be it'd be really interesting to see how it goes. To have like I don't know a guest vocalist, for example, to do choruses in English and maybe make it in sort of like a dialogue. But I don't know, maybe it would sound convoluted, but at this day and age, if you can, language is not that big of an issue. I think it's just more about the way, about more about the way it sounds. But I'm hearing different opinions about that. Some people say that the lyrics don't really matter that much. It's more about emotion, but um, some people really like to know what they're listening to. What is it about? But sometimes I just, read and maybe I don't still don't understand what is it about because it's just, some poetic stuff. So it has to really be something. I think people are more like they want to understand lyrics, not just to know what is it about, but so they could sing along during shows. But and our music is not really like that. When we are gonna start playing like Bring Me the Horizon, maybe it will be relevant. Could happen.
Let's talk about the visual side of the band. You have pretty cohesive story on your covers and then in your videos. You can see all these like figurines, like human-like figurines that covered in bandages. Or what's the history behind them? Who makes them? Who you collaborate with?
Okay, so epigrama basically is a word which means that these were like short sentences written on gravestones. For example, when there's like a prominent person and they maybe just put a citation about something about life, often very sarcastic, what that person said, and then it's like originating like from Greeks and having those gravestones. So the whole core of the visual and the whole album is sort of, you can imagine it as like a gravestone in a graveyard, and not just any graveyard, but the visual comes from my friend Simonas from band Luktus from Lithuania as well. Maybe um, I remember I wrote him several years back while I was traveling to Rome because he has relations like with that city, and he recommended going to this oldest cemetery in Europe called Campo Verano. And it's not like the cemeteries we have there. It's like a museum. It's like a monumental cemetery. It has, I don't know how old those gravestones and angels and statues and mausoleums, and they're all old and they're all weathered by rain. And you know what I mean? When the rain falls, they start shrugging and like looking really like bad or badass, I should say, covered with moss and some kind of dark areas and really faces. They're literally looking like they're melting, especially the old ones, not the new ones. And that really inspired me because Epigrama has this gravestone-like theme around the word itself. So those statues of figurines that we created are basically sort of those weather statues you can find in that particular cemetery or any other old, very old cemetery or a statue anywhere in the world. So they are them. How they, well, we just chose a way how to create them, by using, like mannequins and applying material to them. So I asked my friends who are tattoo artists, Vainus and Maria. So they helped me out in creating them. So we have a statue for each and every song. So there's 8 songs, so there's 8 statues. Um, sculptures. I don't know. I don't want to call them sculptures because sculpture is like an art form by itself. But well, technically that's what it is. So we were using I don't know how the material is called, gypsum. We call it gypsus, I don't remember. So well, it's being made when you break your arm and you just they wrap around it and it just stays in place. So we use that and yeah, so we really enjoyed the process of making it because in this world of AI and stuff where everything is fake, doing something by hand is so unique and cool. Well, I'm just I'm being sarcastic, but that's kind of true in a sense that we wanted to really make it by ourselves, and we did always do that, and me as well, because I photographed everything in the second album and the first album. The first album, the photography was a little bit, not that serious in the way it presented itself. But second album is we also made all the music videos by ourselves and used opportunity and costumes and paint and whatnot to do some photo shoots. So there's actually, for example, if you would look at our second album cover, that's our drummer on the cover, covered in like all sorts of stuff. So it's important, and yet another aspect of the DIY thing that I personally enjoy because it makes everything a little bit consistent. It definitely is, how to say, more difficult to do everything like that, but I don't know. I really enjoy that. So this time we really took time and thought about how all the graphics should look like, and we had like 6 photo shoots, shooting those sculptures outside, inside, looking them, improving them, and taking them to a different setting. So actually, today I finished finalizing the photos of the sculptures because we're gonna have album release show in 2 weeks, and we're gonna have also an exhibition of those photos. There's gonna be like huge prints at the venue that we're doing the show because the visual aspect is like really important, an important part of the album, of like having to see those artworks in the vinyl also that I already have here on my couch, sitting in 3 huge boxes here. I really wanted to be like consistent in all areas. So I'm really happy that we came up with the concept that I personally had a connection with when I visited that old cemetery, and I remembered. Well, to be honest, I remembered the cemetery a little bit later, but I had this idea for a very long time of those weathered sculptures, weathered by time and entropy. Actually, it connects with the core thing because those statues are not going to be there forever. Basically, law of entropy just is going to dissolve it anyway, and it's by weather, wind, or time itself. It's just gonna decompose structurally. So I actually like talking about it as well because I'm like really proud how it turned out. And the music videos, we incorporated in them as much as possible. And so yeah, I think uh, it will take a little bit of time till I find something else for the new album. So in the meantime, maybe we will be focusing on a more smaller scale things because it's very difficult to basically think about all these things and how they could correlate. Usually, what you do is you find an artist for the cover, you find a team, a production team, and a director for a music video. You find someone to make the layouts for the book, for the LP, for the CD. You have someone to design t-shirts, and this time everything fell well. That's how we chose to do it. So I had a little bit of help of the friends I mentioned. So I'm really happy they're joining forces for this project.
And Erdve is also known to play at very interesting venues. You played in Vilnius in the church, but you also played at the prison that used to be, I think it was built originally as a Tsarist Russian Empire prison. Then Nazis and USSR in occupation also used it. So how how did you choose those places? Was it just the chance somebody proposed you, hey, you can play here, and you're like, yeah, this will be great, or was it intentional pick?
Yeah, thanks for this question. It is really important, and those were really two significant shows that we did. Um, Starting about the prison, that's not only like controlled by Soviets, but my even grandfather had a pleasure to serve some time there over some, political stuff like that was relevant back then. Only 2 years and ended up okay for him, but the very, very long life he had afterwards. So yeah, but so I kind of had this because I've listened to his stories, so I always had an interest in the place, this sort of interest in a sense that I would have been afraid to get to be there if I did something wrong. We did the show. Right now, the prison is transformed into
Like event space.
well, not just event space. There's like a complete transformation. Yeah, they have like a stage outside, they have bars, they have a club, I think. They're renting out the whole place for musicians and artists to have studios there. That's a very active, creative social hub,
Mhm.
like in Vilnius. And there's like events almost every second day going on. So it's a really cool place. I was actually having a friend from Germany visiting me over last weekend, so I just went to show him around and tell those all those stories about it. But our show was before the transformation, so we basically had some contacts. The inmates were just transferred a few months ago, so you could still have the energy. There was no bars, there was no nothing. It was just a prison. So we were quite lucky, and just basically because of people we knew how to just approach the place that and the people responsible for it. And yeah, and we managed to get it for a show, but there's no infrastructure, so it was kind of a little bit difficult to do a show there logistically. But the architecture is very suitable. Right now they have gigs in the same space. So if anybody listening to this one, I suggest you check it out. It's called Erdve at Lukiškės Prison. And it has this sort of like round cylinder shaped hall with 3 stories, three stories. And it's like a central hall, and you have corridors to the holding cells each. And there was these nets that would keep from people trying to kill themselves when falling. So they would just very strong nets. So it was an interesting atmosphere. So you're like in this big room, which is the shape of a cylinder, and you just see these layers of nets, and people were watching all around it, just like looking down, and you could see their silhouettes. So there was like these dark figures watching. You never experience something from the point of view like on playing a stage. You just have this, you're on stage and there's this hall and there's just people and they're sometimes lit. But there it was quite creepy having people watch over you from very up, like they might jump like any second. The sound was, very, it was we tried to make it as best as possible, and guys really did a good job working there. But it was a challenge because you really need to basically measure the acoustics of that place and have it placed in 3 stories tall, three lines of PA, on each on each level so that people would hear. So it was, and we had to like set all the lighting and everything. So yeah, it was successful. Also, the show was during COVID, the shittiest time ever to make shows. So we were risking having too many people coming over, but it ended up okay. And about the church gig, it was also it's a place where there events like that are happening from time to time. For example, like some bigger artists like Swans were playing last year, I think, in the church, and other bands in the same one. But I think before us, well, definitely no metal shows before, and nothing that of a source, because that church is basically in the vicinity of Vilnius University, so it was a little bit easier to get into it because you don't get to go like to maybe in the same way that you would go to another church. So since there were events happening from time to time, I think that made it easier. But I wasn't the one that organized it. Uh, so yeah, and that was also really cool gig. Very challenging in terms of setting up a good sound. But many people came over, and the atmosphere was really cool. We did custom lighting for the church, so we didn't use the inside lighting, which is like usually very bad, just it's for a completely different purpose, and so it would be light and and during the mass and whatever. But we made it really like creepy. So also, if for whom is watching, so check it out, Erdve at St. John's Church. So those are really proud of how those videos turned out.
Yeah, we will link those videos definitely so people can check them out both in the video and in the text version on the website. Let's talk about that show in Lukiškės Prison, since you already have the personal connection, your family story. How was it personally for you? What were your feelings when you were inside those walls? Like, what did you think about?
So when we arrived to prepare for the show, we saw that there's some people walking around, like they're just they were they were like carrying some furniture to a truck or something, or they're just carrying some ta chairs, tables. I don't know, just someone, because it turns out they were inmates and not the best ones, but I guess they were kept there to basically tidy up the place, and they were walking right beside us, and we were like, "Oh, who are these guys?" Just there were a few guards working there still, so it wasn't a problem, but we didn't know that. We thought maybe those are just some hired guys to take care of all those, utilization, basically, or just finalizing the relocation of the inmates or whatever, but those were actual inmates. So we were like at one time, okay, oh, okay, I've never been, they're still a subject of their punishment. And I've never been in a place where you have like people who are sentenced walking around beside you, even though it's not Norway where you have some towns where they just walk around and say hi and drink beer with you and and they just get back before 9 o'clock or something. So that was interesting. Also, we heard some stories, like real life stories about the place. Of course, right now they're doing tours like that like every week, I think. So you can, if anybody visits Vilnius anytime, they can sign up for a tour like that. They would tell all the dark past of those walls. Another thing was, since there was no transformation and nothing like that, we basically were feeling a little bit like trespassers in the place, and we were kind of concerned uh, what it means, to someone. Or so, why the fuck are you going to play in a prison? Like, what's the point? I remember when I was a teenager, Metallica went to play to this prison for inmates. So they actually did a show for inmates. So, and they talked about something like they got arrested one time for being like drunk publicly, and now he knows what it feels like to be incarcerated or something. So it was a little bit cringe. But for us, we were trying to approach it very respectfully, not to like make this we're in the prison, yeah, so cool, It was, trying to respect the place. So we were a little bit humbled, a little bit, grounded, like, okay, guys, let's do this. Let's keep everything simple. Let's do our thing and not make like uh, well, we didn't go to like prison cells and make funny pictures of like pretending that we're in a prison or something, because we had a lot of free time during that day. We could have just walked around all the building and doing some, bullshitting and stuff like that. And I remember after that, there were many times that Netflix, for example, or other companies, they really often use the location for movies and TV shows. And they made a scene where there exactly at the place we played there was a nightclub, and right now it is, but in those they were using those small cells where they would detain you for being bad, just solitary or something. And those are like club girls dancing on those, poles and like doing some things like. And I was like, oh shit, no, so that's a little bit weird. Well, the scene was that it's a like former prison now club, so exactly how it is right now. But so, and when you know some stories from back then, and you know what they did in those cells, and stories that my grandfather told me, and so I had this like, okay, I don't want to make fun of this. Let's not make fun of this. Let's treat this with respect. We use this sort of as an historical architecture that has a certain vibe and element to it, just to enhance the experience. So we were a little bit concerned about how we communicate about it, but I don't think that maybe it's that even important. Maybe we're just overthinking. So yeah, so emotions like that. So it's really, really, really cool thing to experience. Right now, we could also play there, I guess. And I went to a couple of shows there. So it's right now it's completely different, because you have some nice music playing and there's no silence. But it's a very cool place. So I recommend everyone, if someone's visiting Vilnius, just check it out. I think it's quite unique.
It was a great conversation. We've been talking for an hour, but it felt very fast. So before closing, what words would you like to say for folks who are watching us, who are going to read the interview, folks who know Erdve, folks who are going to only discover your music?
Yeah, so I just invite everyone to, of course, watch our music videos that we made. We really try to make them good, sound good. We worked a lot on the music, so it's like every comment, feedback is really appreciated. I hope you will enjoy the music. We can also say that we will not do that many gaps in releasing music like we did before. So right now that we have this creative clarity that maybe was lacking a little bit before, so we are already working on an EP and singles and stuff like that. So expect new music and yeah, just we're gonna try to be as productive as possible. And I invite also, yeah, if anybody listens to the new album, I would really appreciate if you send feedback. I'm a little bit lacking of discussion about discussions about music, and we are not a very known band, so every like opinions really matter for us, if especially if you like it. I noticed this trend of basically writing reviews, just using AI, and they are often really generic. So any kind of sincere feedback and findings that you find on my music, you just feel free to reach out, and we will, if you want to discuss, ask anything, we're here, and would really like to hear your thoughts about the rest of the songs, because each and every song is completely different, and it has its own statement, and it has its own sound, and the flow. So yeah, yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, Erdve's new album Epigrama is coming out on Season of Mist in 10 days, May 29th. And
Oh, that's so soon.
it's in 10 days. Yeah, we're talking on Tuesday, May 19th. And as you heard from Vaidotas himself, share what you think about the music. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, man. Thanks.
TheMetalist.com. Subscribe.